من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وأصحابه ومن تبعهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين أما بعد. So inshallah ta'ala, today we'll be continuing discussing the book Sahih Muslim by Zabidi rahimahullah ta'ala, and we'll be picking up from where we had stopped in the last lesson. So we'll have the hadith read and then we'll discuss the fawahid that can be the benefits that can be taken from the hadith. Tafaddalu.
Bismillah wa salatu wa salamu ala rasulillah. Qala ma'allif rahimahullah. Hadith number 333, narrated by Abi Dharr al-Ghifari radiyallahu an. Qal, he said, we were with the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam on a journey, and the mu'adhin, the caller for the salah, wanted to pronounce the adhan for the call for dhuhr. The Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, let it become cooler. He again, after a while, wanted to pronounce the adhan, but the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam said to him, let it become cooler till we see the shadows of hillocks. The Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam added, the severity of heat is from the raging of the hellfire, and in very hot weather, pray dhuhr when it becomes cooler.
That's the hadith?
That's the hadith.
Hey, so Bismillah, they discuss concerning, as in my book, I have Ibrad bil dhuhr fi safar. So still discussing the matter we had discussed last week regarding the Prophet ﷺ, in particular with Salatul Dhuhr, given the allowance for the people to delay dhuhr, and as the hadith mentioned, due to the severeness, the severe heat, that some allowance is made. So in the hadith we discussed several masail that relate to that particular hadith. As for this particular hadith that is mentioned, that's hadith of Abi Dharr al-Ghifari. So Abi Dharr al-Ghifari radiyallahu anhu قال قلنا مع رسول الله عليه الصلاة والسلام في سفر وأراد المؤذن أن يؤذن الظهر. So with this particular case that he mentioned regarding that the Prophet ﷺ, that he was in a safar, that in a journey with the companions, and after those things that he mentioned that the Prophet ﷺ, that muazzin, that he wanted to call the adhan for dhuhr. Then the Prophet ﷺ told him concerning ibrad, that or abrad, that for a person to delay. ثم أراد أن يؤذن, and the person still wished to perform the adhan, and he repeated this statement several times. So from this particular hadith they mentioned regarding concerning that this particular hadith, it shows mainly, or this hadith is to show regarding those ahkam regarding delaying of the salat due to the heat. Then this is applied whether the person is a safar in traveling or the person is residential. So the shahid, the main point from the hadith, that this practice of delaying dhuhr due to the heat, the severe weather, that one is allowed to delay the salat. Whether the person, in this case concerned, I mentioned that they were in a travel. So they show that the permissibility of this being done as a traveler. So those that are traveling and it's very hot at the time for dhuhr, they can delay their salat. And this also, then they mentioned regarding concerning the hadith also mentioned, فَأَرَادَ الْمُؤَذِّنِ أَنْ يُؤَذِّنَ الظُّهْرِ. So of the things they discuss, that a matter that is discussed between the fuqaha, that they mentioned the Prophet that the mu'adhin wanted to call the adhan. They mentioned that the mu'adhin in this case, it is Bilal. That the mu'adhin in this case, it is Bilal. Also they discuss regarding this hadith that the mu'adhin, that he wanted to perform the adhan. So also it shows regarding that the permissibility of calling the adhan as travelers. So the adhan as traveler is something that is allowed. And we'll discuss concerning the ulama, that we'll discuss regarding call the adhan, is it for the traveler, is it wajib or not? But this particular hadith shows the permissibility of the concept, the mashru'iyat, the permissibility that as travelers, that one can call the adhan. Then also the second, another method that is mentioned regarding this particular hadith, that they mentioned that with calling the adhan, is the adhan intended, in calling the adhan, is it intended for the salat, meaning the closeness for the salat to be prayed, or in calling the adhan, that it is to let the people be aware that the time the salat have entered. Clear? So the adhan, they have a discussion. So is the adhan to be called as the time enters, because that's his purpose, that the people know the what? That the time has actually entered. So for example, dhuhr, it starts at 12 noon. Then I mentioned that if the adhan is what is intended by the adhan, to let the people know that the waqt of the salat have entered, then it should be called at 12 noon. Then it should be called at 12 noon. But I mentioned that even the adhan, of the purpose of the adhan or the adhan, what it is meant is to let the people know that as salatul jama', that it is close, so start getting yourself prepared. So it could be prayed after the time has entered. So it's more so that the people know, that the people be aware that the salat is soon to be established, the iqamah is soon to be called. So get yourself somewhat prepared and ready and start to proceed towards the masjid. So you have that this discussion between the ulama. Is adhan lis-salat or lil-waqt, lil-dukhul al-waqt? So that discussion between the ulama. So for example, that like in this masjid, that the adhan is called at times after the entry of most of the salat. Not the exact time the time enters, that the adhan is called immediately then. So you have that discussion between the ulama. So let's say from this, the Prophet that I mentioned, abrid regarding the adhan, that is telling them to delay the adhan. Nam, so it means that you're so delay the adhan, so you're calling the adhan after, a while after the time of that salat has entered. So it's not called on the time that the time have entered. So you have the discussion, as Ibn Ajwar rahimahullah ta'ala mentioned others, but you have that discussion between the ulama. Is the adhan lis salat, is for the salat, meaning that the time that the salat is soon to be prayed, qurb as salat, or is it mainly the dukhul al-waqt, that the time for that salat has entered? So that discussion, as we mentioned, between the ulama on that matter. So this hadith, they mentioned that it proves, for those who mentioned that, it's of those that can be used to showing that the adhan is at times meant to show closeness to the salat. So if it is done whichever way, then both way, inshallah ta'ala, are allowed as to which is more preferred, and that to be, and which is more preferred, that to be discussed later at the time in the bab of adhan. Then they mention from this hadith also that they mentioned, and that's concerning that the Prophet mentioned, وَهَذِي, that they mentioned that mentioned regarding that, as we have discussed, that the person should not delay the salat until the time is close to come to an end. So even though it's allowed for a person for reasons to delay praying the salat, but the salat should not be delayed to the extent where the time of the salat is soon to go. Then that is not allowed. Then that becomes, ulama mentioned, that is not allowed. So that's concerning what is mentioned regarding that particular hadith that had been mentioned. So other points of the hadith, we have points that we have covered in the previous hadith. Aywa.
قال المؤلف رحمه الله, chapter 7, hadith number 344. The time of the dhuhr prayer is when the sun declines just after midday. Narrated by Anas ibn Malik radiyallahu anhu, Allah's Messenger sallallahu alayhi wasallam came out as the sun declined at midday and offered the dhuhr prayer. He then stood at the pulpit and spoke about the hour, the day of judgment, and mentioned great events and matters therein. He then said, whoever likes to ask me about anything, he can do so, and I shall reply as long as I am at this place of mine. Most of the people wept, and the Prophet ﷺ said repeatedly, ask me. Abdullah ibn Hudayfa as-Sahmi stood up and said, who is my father? The Prophet ﷺ said, your father is Hudayfa. The Prophet ﷺ repeatedly asked me. Then Omar radiallahu anhu knelt before him and said, "We are pleased with Allah as our Lord, Islam as our religion, and Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wasallam as our Prophet." The Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam then became quiet and said, "Paradise and hellfire were displayed in front of me on this wall just now, and I have never seen a better thing than the former and a worse thing than the latter." Some part of this hadith has been put in the book of knowledge, hadith number 81, narrated by Abu Musa. But this hadith, there is addition and wording is different.
So they mentioned this hadith with the hadith of Anas bin Malik. So this hadith that is mentioned is the hadith of Anas bin Malik anhu, where he mentioned that the chapter heading, Waqt al-Dhuhr in the Zawal. So this hadith now to discuss at what point or what time the Salat al-Dhuhr begins. So the author, rahimahullah ta'ala, would be mentioned a hadith that give us some idea as to the timing of each of the Salat. So starting with Salatul Dhuhr. And they usually start with Salatul Dhuhr. As they mentioned, Salatul Dhuhr is the Salat where the Prophet ﷺ, he was Jibreel taught the Prophet ﷺ al-Dhuhr regarding the Salat, the first of which he taught him was Salatul Dhuhr. So they started with Salat al-Dhuhr. So they start with Salat al-Dhuhr. Then they mentioned Salatul Dhuhr also of several names. Salatul Dhuhr of several names. So research that, inshallah ta'ala, we all research it, the different names of Salatul Dhuhr. And next week we'll discuss it. So Salatul Dhuhr, that ulama mentioned, that it have several names. So if we can research to find out the other names of Salat al-Dhuhr. With me? I said, hey, so when you come back with the research, you let me know. Hey, whatever you get, so whatever you find, you bring it back. So he mentioned regarding concerning this hadith to discuss concerning the time of Salat al-Dhuhr. It's to discuss the timing of Salat al-Dhuhr. So they mentioned regarding concerning which is the awwal waqt Salat al-Dhuhr. So this is the time that Salat al-Dhuhr it actually starts. Where the Prophet mentioned that خَرَجَ إِينَا زَاكَةِ الشَّمْسِ فَصَلَّى الظُّهْرِ. So the hadith, it mentioned the Prophet that he came out and prayed Salat al-Dhuhr حِينَ زَاكَةِ الشَّمْسِ. That when the sun yamil, so the sun starts to decline. When the sun it starts to decline, then he mentioned فَصَلَّى الظُّهْرِ. Then the Prophet ﷺ, he prayed Salat al-Dhuhr. So from this they mentioned that this hadith shows regarding that of the earlier time of Salat al-Dhuhr that is to be prayed at this particular time when the sun starts then to decline. So midday, or we call midday, when the sun at the meridian in the peak, then it starts now to decline, then that now indicate that Salat al-Dhuhr, it has now started. Then it mentioned فَقَامَ عَلَى مِنْبَرٍ. So the Prophet ﷺ, then it mentioned that after praying Salat al-Dhuhr and ended Salat al-Dhuhr at that time, where he prayed at his earliest time, Salat al-Dhuhr, then the next thing that he did after Salat al-Dhuhr, فَقَامَ عَلَى مِنْبَرٍ. To the Prophet ﷺ, that he went on the minbar. So it shows regarding the permissibility of using the minbar outside Jummah. So it says now what have been now the practice in most places that or many of the masajid that the minbar is only used for Jummah. But as the Prophet ﷺ, there are times that he would, if you want to give like a lecture or give a talk, we use the word lecture or a reminder or some words to be mentioned that he will go on the minbar. So the minbar can be used for those things. Most said now today in today's in the masajid of today that we have like specific areas or things other than the minbar that is used for giving lectures. But the minbar can be used. So the minbar, so the person can sit, the teacher can sit on the minbar and give the lectures. So the Prophet ﷺ, فَقَامَ عَلَى minbar. So the Prophet ﷺ, that he went up and then he gave a reminder or something was said on the minbar. That I mentioned, فَذَكْرَ السَّاعَةِ. The other thing that was mentioned is as-sa'. That things regarding as-sa' in this intent mention qiyam as-sa'. So the Prophet ﷺ, that he mentioned things regarding qiyam as-sa'. Of those who have explained the hadith, then he mentioned فَذَكَرْ أَنَّ فِيهَا أُمُورٍ idam, that the Prophet Islam in this, what he had mentioned on the minbar, he discussed matters regarding qiyamusa, the establishment of the hour, or the last day. Then he mentioned that, and he mentioned certain important, vital matters were mentioned, important matters were mentioned regarding qiyamusa. So not concerning al-qiyamusa, it goes through different things that will occur. Ahwal, yawm al-qiyamah, different arrows, or different things that will occur on Yawm al-Qiyamah would be several things. So Yawm al-Qiyamah, that there are several things that will take place on Yawm al-Qiyamah, and those things can be shadid. Those things can be difficult. So he mentioned regarding the Prophet, and then he mentioned after he mentioned what he had mentioned, then he mentioned ثُمَّ قَالَ. The narrator mentioned the Prophet, and then he says, مَنْ أَحَبَّ أَنْ يَسْأَلْ عَنْ شَيْءٍ فَلْيَسْأَلْ. That the one who wished to ask about any matter, then ask. So also showed the Prophet Islam regarding after this, after his, his talk, the reminder that he gave, then he asked the people after the end that they can pose a question to him. They can pose question. So he mentioned manahab, that the one who wishes to ask any question on any matter, then they can do so. فَلْيَسْأَلْ, then ask. Then فَلَا تَسْأَلُونَنِي عَنْ شَيْءٍ إِلَّا أَخْبَرْتُكُمْ بِهِ. And whatever they ask, the Prophet Islam that he mentioned, أخبار, that he gave them an answer to those questions. He gave them the answers to those questions. So whatever was asked, that the Prophet Islam, he gave answers to those questions. So today might call that al-fatwa. So today, they might call it, so either consider that in a sense of a lesson that was in today's language, a prepared lesson on a specific topic. So the Prophet Islam had a lecture or a talk, words to be mentioned after Salat. So also should know that these things can be done after the Salat, the compulsory Salat. Then it mentioned that, so he gave a talk on a specific topic, which was matters relating to Qiyamusa. So today we find that a person, in most part, when a person gives a lecture, he tries to discuss a particular topic. So then I mentioned that the Prophet Islam, he mentioned matters pertaining to that topic, and also should show that regarding a person who may discuss a particular topic, try to discuss things related to that topic. Not as we say sometimes all over the place. And at times that a person all over the place, they are not prepared. Especially the person who is expected to give a lecture, but they are not prepared. Then you might find a person all over the place. So it shows that the permissibility of a person discussing a specific topic and what relates to that particular topic, then after lecture, then the person can ask the audience for them to pose questions. So the Prophet asked concerning people, Man habba an yas'al, falyas'al. Then an shay, falyas'al. Anyone who wishes to ask about anything, then they should ask. So I said that for a person to generalize, that requires that ask anything that you wish, that's for a person to alim. Or talib al-ilm qawi. Regarding asking the public, the audience, to ask about any matter, meaning anything that, to ask about any matter, then that requires a person who qawi fi ilm. So then the Prophet as I mentioned, illa akhbartukum bi, except I give you answers to your questions. So also it shows regarding that the person who in responding, that a person give answer based upon an-nas, or the person give answers that are Islamic answers based upon dalil. Based upon dalil. Then so it shows that then it mentioned and said and or the person at times may wish to ask questions or take questions that are specific to that topic. As if for most tolerable ilm, then that's maybe the safer route. Take question related to the topic that was prepared and discussed. Because the person to discuss things of different things, mean the person is well grounded in everything, or have a good idea of a good foundation on all different topics. Tafsir, fiqh, aqidah, and other sciences. So the person who can somewhat ask the public to ask about anything, then that person should be well grounded. Or for the audience, even the person might, the lecturer might put out the question, or might wish to take any question. The safe route for most tullab, ask them about what they did, what they mentioned. Ask them if you need clarity on what they discuss. Nam, so as to make it safe for everyone. Nam, then it mentioned on the matter, the Prophet comes to inform the people, which is by way of the Sunnah. Fakal, of the ulama mentioned when they discussed the hadith, that this hadith concerned this hadith, was that you find the Prophet he mentioned or discussed this particular topic due to certain things that the munafiq was attacking him about. So they mentioned that this hadith related concerning that you have some of munafiq, the hypocrites, that they were attacking the Prophet ﷺ and things that was being said. So the Prophet ﷺ wished to clarify certain things. Nam, then ask the people, then put your questions to me regarding the thing that as you find the munafiq of their general pattern is that they try to put tashkik, that they try to put in the minds of the people doubt, that they try to put doubt in the people's minds. So either doubt in the person that the people of ilm that you can take from. So you find the people of nifaq, that their way of approach, either one, put doubt upon the person who delivering the message, or the person of ilm, so that the people not to trust them. Then or they put a question mark regarding the source of ilm, the Quran, the Sunnah, and the like. So that now these are the ways of the munafiq. So they put doubts in the people's mind regarding the information that is being given. So the Prophet ﷺ wished to clarify certain things and also put it to the people. Then, okay, if you have anything to say, I'm here. Put it. Anything to be said, any question to be asked, anything to be clarified, then you can pose your question directly to me. Then I mentioned that وَمَا دُمْتُ فِي مَقَامِ هَذَا, as long as I'm in my position here. Then I mentioned فَأَكْثَرَ النَّاسِ فِي بُقَى. The ulama mentioned to them, and that most of the people after what they have heard, that they start to weep. That they start to weep. So also the hadith shows regarding the permissibility of a person to said, cry to weep. So it shows that sometimes a person may hear a lecture and it kind of somewhat, it affects him emotionally. So he weeps. So of those, amongst those that were present, after hearing what they heard about concern, then they started to weep, or they started to cry. Of the ulama mentioned that فَأَكْثَرَ النَّاسِ فِي الْبُكَى, that it shows that concern that they mentioned that the people that they wept either because of the topic that was being discussed was matters regarding as-saa, matters regarding the qiyamus, that so they were somewhat overcome by this. So they weep because of information that they have heard regarding Yawm al-Qiyamah and their fear of Yawm al-Qiyamah. So that can somewhat affect an individual. And also that others will mention that they wept based upon that their fear regarding that some of those things that were mentioned, that it may fall upon them, or it may fall into those things. And how they will fear on Yawm al-Qiyamah. So when a person, so those are things that the Prophet ﷺ so mentioned things to touch the people's heart, or mention those information, but it touched the person's heart. There also the ulama they mentioned, that's another mention to know, that at times a person you might find today, that a person might discuss a topic and he's eloquent and but it doesn't affect your heart. You don't feel any way, it doesn't affect you in any way. Either sometimes the information the information being given is not correct. So it does not have that impact. Or a person doesn't try to tailor the information where he's trying to get to you, and that's his intention. So he throw in different things that make it somewhat, it does not have that impact, where he might mention things that it sounds a bit off. or at times the person given the information himself is not convinced by what he's saying. So it doesn't convince anyone or of the people, because he himself, even though he's given the information, but he himself is not fully convinced about what is being said. And it's not affecting him. So it doesn't affect others. So the person, the vessel itself is a bit shaky, or the information also at times is shaky. And also for a da'i, that his intention is not to, in giving a lecture, kind of somewhat to move the people the way that he wants. Not to move the people. And at times you might, today you find that a lot of people give lectures that it doesn't serve its purpose as it should, because of, I said, the person sometimes do it because of, he's going to get paid. He's doing a lecture because for him, the important aspect of it is that he's going to get paid. And sometimes you hear of some of the cases that what a person receive as payment, you're thinking, inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. Is this real? Case that I've heard, that especially regarding fundraising events, that the person who's the invited guest lecturer, that they may ask that organization, that masjid, that whatever you collect of your collection, I get a certain percentage. It could run to, whatever the purpose, it could run to 30%. So whatever you collect from that fundraising event, whatever you collect, 10,000, a million, a certain percentage of that is mine. Outside my travel, outside accommodation, you understand? So whatever you collect, a certain percentage of that is mine. And that could go in some places from 30 to 50%. From some places, 30 to 50%. And you have some duat that, some events that they sell tickets, isn't it? You want the party, you have to buy tickets and all that. If the tickets that are being sold is not to a certain amount of people, they have a problem. They are not too enthusiastic in going because it doesn't have a big crowd. And you have some people are like that. MashaAllah. Allah Mustan. Someone said, you have those things that are out there. You have those things. But overall, that kind of Prophet Islam, and also it shows regarding, so back to what we're discussing, the hadith directly, that it shows us that a person who put themselves forward regarding ilm should be a person of ilm. So that overall, the person who put themselves forward regarding matters relating to ilm of this deen is a person of ilm. That a person, one, have a track record that they have studied. Before you can put, that's a criteria before you can put yourself forward. And unfortunately, you find that people put themselves forward. In other cases, they have no track record that they have studied. In the traditional way. With a sheikh or in an institute, credible institute, they do not have those basic criteria. But they're in the forefront of giving dawah. Which is, you understand, that according to the manhaj salaf, then that is unknown. If you ask anyone who know concerning dawah to Ahl Sunnah, is this known amongst the salaf, amongst the imam? They'll say no. That a person who does not have a track record of studying, that they're the people in the forefront of the dawah, that's impossible. But we find this today. So you find also the next case, said the person also regarding this ilm, like for example, we're coming at a time of this year, we find that mashaykh come from different countries to benefit us. So I said benefit from those that we can benefit from. And I said and we said all the time, that is not, if we find that mashaykh who are known, are present, teaching us, why is that talib who is more like his student, you're teaching? Up to now, I cannot understand that mindset. That a person who is visiting, more qualified, or is at least qualified enough to teach and benefit from most, but if a person who is less qualified than he is, that he's teaching at the same time. They show that the person does that shows a lack of respect of ilm. So I said overall that the person who teach, and the person which can somewhat put themselves forward, the person must have a track record that they have studied Islam. Not just studied, if you go overseas in Muslim country, and you'll find that Thalatha Usul, a person who studied Thalatha Usul, Adab, Meshi ila Salat, Arba'in al-Nawawiyah, Qawaid al-Arba, that person never teaches. He doesn't even speak. You with me? A person overseas in a Muslim country, that have studied Qawaid al-Arba, Kashf Shubahat. What else we said? Adab, Meshi ila Salat. Sifat al-Salat al-Nabi by Sheikh Albani. Show that one in. What else? And those books. You'll never find such a person put themselves forward to teach anyone. Never. They are still student and understand that they are only but a student and should not speak. Now, you'll find that a person who learned Thalatha Usul, we said Qawaid al-Arba, Sifat al-Salat, a portion of Arba'in, they are teaching here. And I've done Medina, book 1, and Alpha, book 2. And they are teaching. They are teaching, you understand, Aqidah, Sabuni, Kitab al-Tawheed, and others, you understand, Arba'in al-Nawawiyah. You understand? So that's the situation that we have, which is a problem. Confusion. Aywa?
Is it different if someone's teaching like what you're doing now, or someone's just teaching like one-to-one, what he's just learned?
Now, the person is the one-to-one, so the thing that you have learned, in like a revision to someone, that's not a problem. But it's the person that is going teaching the general public. But what he has, you understand, what he has is still a beginners. He said that's the start of a beginner level. That's the start of a beginner level. Then that's a problem. He's teaching the public as if he's Shaykh al-Islam. Then that's a problem. And that we find, unfortunately, amongst ourselves. So overall, so it shows regarding that the Prophet Islam, he posed question, asked the people to pose a question, then he answered their question. Then I mentioned the people that they cried based upon the information they have received. Then I mentioned for Akthar and Yaqul, Sallu, that the people asked regarding more questions. Then it mentioned regarding concerning of those people mentioned as concerning Faqal Abu Hudhafa. So Abu Hudhafa, that I mentioned that Qal asked concerning, he asked, we have mentioned to the Prophet ﷺ, we ask his question, Man Abi? Man Abi, who's my father? They mentioned regarding he asked that question because that of those who kind of somewhat, as mentioned by Al-Waqidi, that they are those concerned Abdullah ibn Hudhafa, that people kind of somewhat, they question his lineage. His lineage was being questioned. So that was the reason why he asked the Prophet ﷺ regarding Man Abi, because of that people questioned concerning his lineage. Now, so just wanted clarity from the Prophet ﷺ regarding that matter, and he mentioned Abuka Hudhafa. Now, then the Prophet ﷺ, then he mentioned Ubaraka Omar, then Omar, he came and joined in regarding ala rukbatayhi, faqal radina billah rabban wa bi islam dinan wa bi Muhammad alayhi salam nabiyyan fasakat. Then it mentioned that Omar came and he mentioned those statements. Omar ibn Khattab, he came and mentioned those statements regarding that we are pleased to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as our Lord, and that as Islam, as a religion where Islam is a religion Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will only accept, and no other religion, and Yawm al-Qiyamah. Now, so the only religion Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will accept is Al-Islam. And also concerns that Islam, it revolves around those matters. Iman billah, Iman bil Islam, and also Iman with Muhammad alayhi salam. So Iman, it revolves around those three things, or Islam, or this deen. Iman billah, wa bi Islam, and also bi nabiyya, bin nabuwa, Muhammad alayhi salam. So that's concerning those matters of that this deen, it revolves around this matter. Then I mentioned, Udat alayya al-Jannah wa nar, anifa. Then I mentioned that it was just put to me a Jannah wa nar. So as we had mentioned before, it shows regarding a Jannah wa nar makhluqatan. That both a Jannah and nar, that they're created and existing at this moment. That Jannah wa nar, that they're existing at this time, and not will be created and exist يوم after يوم القيامة. في أرض هذه عاهد لم أرى خير وشر. That they mentioned the problems that I mentioned regarding concerning that, of those things regarding that in the masjid, that فلم أرى كخير وشر, that I didn't see concerning that things regarding good or bad. He meant them. The ulama mentioned that's not what he saw regarding that of what he have just witnessed and saw of good and khair regarding in Jannah. So the good that he saw in Jannah. Other mention regarding concerning that of those good regarding things of acts of obedience that will lead a person to Jannah, and also ashar that he saw, that he mentioned that things regarding things that related to an-nar, things that concerning ashar of evil, things that relates to an-nar. So it mentioned regarding those of the matter that they discussed regarding of the hadith. So overall, this hadith shows regarding that they mentioned that this hadith, it shows regarding the Prophet ﷺ, regarding the shahadat as-salatu dhuhr, that it starts from the sun starting to decline, that one can pray salatu dhuhr. Also the Prophet ﷺ, that he gave an address on the minbar and discussed matter regarding as-sa, and also discussed a specific topic. Also he discussed important certain points related to that discussion, or certain matters relating to that topic. Also then he asked the people after, he facilitated the people, questioned and gave them answers. And then also you find that different people, the people also that people who cried, who wept from what they have heard. Others asked certain personal question about their situation due to certain type of question that people had regarding their lineage. Then the Prophet ﷺ, then he found that Omar al-Khattab, he came, and also he can somewhat mention certain statements that revolves regarding this deen, that revolves around those three matters. Then the Prophet ﷺ mentioned that it was presented to him a Jannah wa nar, showing that they are in existence at this moment and at this time. And also it shows regarding that a Muslim put effort regarding doing things of khair, as to what awaits the believers regarding a Jannah, and also the Muslim that he tries to avoid things of ashar, and that will be the punishment that can bring about the punishment in an-nar. With that, inshallah ta'ala, we'll end this hadith. Is there another hadith in this chapter?
No. قال المؤلف رحمه الله, hadith number 335, narrated by Abu
Barza.
No, it says something else. But
Okay.
Narrated by Abu al-Minhal, and then it mentions in brackets. It mentioned that in brackets, and then it mentions an Abi Barza radiyallahu anhu said the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam used to offer the Fajr early morning prayer when one could recognize the person sitting by him after the Salah prayer. And he used to recite between 60 to 100 ayat, verses of the Quran. He used to offer the Zuhr prayer as soon as the sun declined at noon, and the Asr prayer at the time when a man might go and return from the furthest place in Al-Madinah and find the sun still hot. And in brackets it mentions the sub-narrator forgot what was said about the Maghrib. He did not mind delaying the Isha prayer to 1/3 of the night or the middle of the night.
So the next hadith they mentioned regarding the hadith of Abi Barza that they mentioned regarding concerning the hadith again regarding as-salat al-dhuhr. So the hadith, the shahid from the hadith is to a point regarding what as-salat al-dhuhr. So they mentioned the Prophet al-Islam, كان النبي الإسلام يصلي الصبح وأحدنا يعرف جليسه. That they mentioned regarding the Prophet al-Islam that he would pray salat al-subh. So they mentioned regarding of those salawat that the Prophet al-Islam would pray regarding compulsory salat. That's salat al-subh. So salat al-subh is which salah? Salat al-subh? Ay fajr. Ay salat al-subh. Salat al-fajr. So after salah we mentioned that of salawat that so salat al-subh also deemed as referred to as salat al-fajr. So I mentioned that kind of basis and يصلي الصبح يعني صلاة الفجر وأحدنا يعرف جليسه, where a person was able to can see the place that they were sitting, or mentioned where the Prophet ﷺ was sitting. So that's some of the ulama discussed regard that I mentioned. ويقرأ فيها ما بين 60 إلى 100 يعني آيات or ayah. So the Prophet ﷺ in Salatul Subh, Salatul Fajr, that it mentioned that they were able to recognize him. They discussed regarding that being to recognize where he would sit. Is it at the start of the salat or at the end of the salah? Huh? So that's now a discussion between the ulama. So of those is this the start where the people able to recognize the beginning of the salat while they were there waiting for the salat, or at the end of the salat? That I mentioned that of those who mentioned that so you have that discussion between the ulama regarding the beginning or the end of the salah. They mentioned of those things, but they mentioned at the end of the salat that they're able to again recognize that this is at the end of the salat, where the people somewhat now show that the prayer started much earlier, and when they end the salat, that people were able to can recognize each other. Then I mentioned وَيَقْرَ فِيهَا يعني في الصلاة الصبح ما بين 60 إلى 100 يعني آية. So the Prophet ﷺ, as what will be is normal practice, that for Salatul Subh it will have a much longer recital, and will go up to 60 to 100 ayah. So they mentioned, so they show that a Salatul Subh or Salatul Fajr, that the recital is much longer normally, so but a person can read up to that amount of ayah. Then I mentioned يصلي الظهر. Then I mentioned that الظهر, which is the shahid, ويصلي الظهر إذا زالت الشمس. So الظهر, when the sun start to decline, when the sun then start to zalat, to go away. Then I mentioned, so they show regarding that salatul al-dhuhr, it is prayed also within that time. Then I mentioned والعصر وأحدنا يذهب إلى أقصى المدينة فيرجع والشمس حي يعني that the shams, that it is like now fully up or white بيضاء. And so إلى الآية I mentioned ونسي الراوي ما قال في مغرب. Then also the narrator he forget regarding what was said regarding al-Maghrib. They mentioned that it shows also the narrator is also being honest. When I mentioned that ونسي الراوي ما قال في مغرب, that there was something mentioned regarding Maghrib, but this particular narrator, he forgot. So they know that. They didn't per se put anything, but they even mentioned that he forgot. So also it shows regarding the hadith here, that this hadith that is in Sahih Bukhari. But this narrator one narrator seems to have forgotten a particular portion of the hadith about what was said regarding Salat al-Maghrib. So it shows one, that the narrator's honesty, that they'll mention at times when they forget of something, and not per se to just add things that they have forgotten. Then that becomes a problem. And also show that not even a person who's said to be thiqat, reliable narrators, that even at times a reliable narrator may forget. So when said a person is reliable as a narrator or of doubt, doesn't mean that he cannot forget. Alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah wa ba'd. So in just ending with this hadith that they mentioned regarding concern of the narrators that forgot certain matters regarding Salat al-Maghrib. Then mentioned, so we said that a person who said to be thiqah with a person that narrator, that he has combined between both ad-dabt wal-adala. So narrator, in one word, that he combined between ad-dabt, that he has good memory, and also adala, that is credible. Then if the person combined between those two things, then he's referred to in one word, thiqah. He's referred to in one word as thiqah. But al-thiqat, they are different levels. And also, they mentioned also a thiqat. It doesn't mean the person can forget. Doesn't mean a person can forget, and even at times a thiqah can even make errors. A thiqah can make errors.
Do they cap it like they say it's minimal? Even though they make errors and they forget, but it's minimal error and it's minimal forget.
And if I say thiqat on different levels. You understand? See, I've sometimes said no, thiqah. They use the word like thiqah twice. So the person and I said no, hadha, you understand? They sometimes no, thiqah. You understand? Different moves up. So they are different levels. So you have some who, yes, their errors are much, you understand, rare because of the level, but they still make error. You understand? So some it is very rare, some very minimal cases of them making error. While, you understand, so that's concern is that we will find with the thiqah that the errors will be, you understand, minimal. Eh?
There's a difference between thiqah and saduq.
There's a big difference between both. Okay, so saduq, the word saduq that is used today, so a thiqah, they'll say a thiqah, that his hadith is considered to be like in the bracket of Saheeh. And saduq, that is said his hadith in the level of hadith hasan. Was it in general? That they mentioned قال ولا يبالي بتأخير العشاء إلى ثلث الليل أو ثم قال إلى شطر الليل. Then I mentioned regarding concerns that and also regarding that for Salatul Isha, that I mentioned that تأخير الصلاة يعني الصلاة العشاء إلى ثلث الليل. That أو قال أو ثم قال إلى شطر الليل. So it mentioned regarding concerns with Salatul Isha, as we'll discuss, that a discussion between the ulama as to when Salatul Isha comes to an end. Is it? As we'll discuss, you have different aqwal between the ulama. Some mention it is Thuluthul Layl, Salatul Isha, from it comes in, that the time extend until Thuluthul Layl, a third of the night. Or some mention ila nifs, which is shatr, which is nifs, on half the night. And we mentioned it goes up until Salatul Fajr. So at what point, at what time does Salatul Isha comes to an end? Is it from the time it begins up until third of the night, then times come to an end? Or Salatul Isha from the time it starts until half the night, that's its time slot? Or it goes from the time it enters until Salatul Fajr, goes straight up until Salatul Fajr. So which is the correct view? So khilaf between the ulama on that matter as to when Salatul Isha comes to an end. We'll discuss that when we discuss Salatul Isha, bi'awnillahi subhanahu wa ta'ala. So those are the matters they discuss. Also it shows regarding that with Salatul Isha, that at times that some Salat, that the Prophet ﷺ will pray Al-Fajr in its earliest time. So Salatul Fajr will be prayed in its earliest time. That and also that Al-Isha, that preferred Isha for it to be delayed. Ta'khir Al-Isha. So the person able to go ta'khir to delayed, then that's better. But the Prophet ﷺ regarding his general practice, that because he would pray Al-Jamaykee, that he would not delay Salatul Isha for third of the night. So even though it may be something which is, that I mentioned, to delay it, that to delay it, but the Prophet ﷺ was still prayed said that at a time that was somewhat conducive for all. So still prayed at a time that was suitable for the majority of the people. Now, not in the more later time. So after things that I'll take into account those matters, was suitable for the majority. So with that, inshallah ta'ala, So they mentioned here regarding overall that from the Hadith that Salatul Subh also recited is longer in Salatul Fajr. Salatul Dhuhr, also the Hadith regarding after the sun, before Yusalli Dhuhr, إذا زاغت الشمس, that prays Zuhr at that time. Then they mentioned Al-Asr, where a person will go from to his house and be back. Then they mentioned Salatul Isha, and also Mustahab, they mentioned that the person delaying Salat al-Isha. So those are the general benefit regarding those particular Salat. So Salatul Subh, Salatul Dhuhr, Asr, Maghrib. The narrator somewhat forgot regarding Salatul Maghrib, but then he mentioned Salatul Isha, that it is preferred if one can delay it. But said no, that is delay in the sense of not to delay, to pray on by oneself and leave away the Jama'ah. So the person don't want to catch this, take this, I want to pray the Sunnah way of Salatul Isha, so I want to delay it. But then it means not praying the Jama'ah, then no. Hey, the person pray to the Jama'ah. And if the person doesn't understand, but the person like at home and unable to come to the masjid, then if the person can delay Isha, then no problem. Delay Isha, no problem. But ideal, the person pray whatever the time that they pray in the masajid. The Jama'ah pray Salatul Isha or any other Salat, the time that they pray in the masajid.
I got a scenario, it occurred recently that I witnessed. So basically, the Salah is the person, the people in the masjid, they establish the Iqamah for the Salah. But as you mentioned, generally that in this country, sometimes we delay the calling of the adhan, even though the time of the Salah is entered. So now they've called the Iqamah and began praying. They called the Iqamah and started to pray. At the end of the Salah, the people started to say the time hasn't entered. The time of the Salah hadn't entered.
They didn't pray in the time.
They didn't pray in the time because when they called the Iqamah, it was the time of the adhan.
Okay.
So they're basically saying they had to pray again. But if according to what you saying, if we have a specific schedule that we call the time of the prayer after the time is already entered, then wouldn't it be considered valid? The prayer is valid.
Okay, so the question, that particular Salat, that the Iqamah was called at the time that they will call the Adhan. And the people, they prayed that Salat. And then some after mentioned that the Salat need to be repeated because it was prayed outside its time, before its time. But I said, if we're saying that the time that the Iqamah, not the Adhan, the Iqamah and the Salat was established, is the time that the Adhan would normally be called.
Yes.
That means that time of the Salat is entered. That's the case?
If that's how we're gonna explain it, but we just mentioned just a minute ago that sometimes we call the adhan, but the time has already entered for the salah. The time of the salah is entered from 20 minutes ago.
And that's clear. So we said the ishkal in this case, that's for clarity, that so their complaint of repeating the salah is that the salat was prayed before its time.
That they display on the...
So the thing is that put aside what is displayed on the notice board. And so in this particular case, that when that salat was prayed was the time of whatever the salat is entered, even though maybe a few minutes in.
Yes, the time.
Then the salat is valid. The salat is valid. So long as the time is in and you pray. So when you want to pray, for example, the time comes in for Dhuhr is an example, at 12:02. The time comes in and the person pray 12:05. Then his salat is valid. His salat is valid because he prayed within the time. So that's the thing. So as long as the time has entered, then that's not a problem. So that salat doesn't need, they need not repeat that salah.
Yes, Sheikh. Things like delaying the adhan because of extreme weathers here.
Of?
Because of extreme weather.
Okay.
I mean, so like over here, does that apply over here as well? Because you know sometimes we may get one hot day or a couple of hot days and things like that. Then can we apply that method of like we delay the adhan, so we delay the salah a little bit as well? Is that
That ruling is a rukhsa which apply.
all around? Yeah.
Apply across the board forever.
Okay, so that leads me to my next question. It's kind of related as well. You know, some say when it rains to a certain level, then we are no longer don't have to present ourselves to the masjid
Aye.
because of the rain. I mean, so like in the Khalij or like Muslim countries, it'd be announced publicly or like over. I mean, so how can it be applied over here?
Now that regarding concern, the Prophet gives some allowance regarding concerning that if there's like weather, severe weather, or said rain, in this case rain.
Even snow or something like this.
Where there's that, then the mu'adhin in the masjid says, after discuss so at what point, but he says, as-salat fi rihalikum. That a person who's calling the adhan, who said the adhan normally be done public. So it says, as-salat fi rihalikum, that you are to pray in your houses. Rihal meaning your manazil. That so in those weather, severe weather, then from the adhan, from the masjid, they would make that call in the adhan. But because said in this country, we don't per se make the adhan outwards. Then is that the person would understand that. Is the person say, okay, that the weather is so severe that I cannot go to the masjid, I'm going to get fully wet and drain in what? Then he make that call. Because come to the masjid now would make a difference. For us, like in England, like to call it in this masjid as-salat fi rahalikum, no one can hear outside, so there's no point.
So I thought about like for instance, Jum'ah. Because obviously so like sometimes you've got people praying outside as well, and people say, well, Jum'ah is wajib.
Yes.
Yeah. So like with that.
No, Jummah still prays with whoever present.
Whoever's present.
Yeah, still prays. Within the adhan, some say after. So, in the adhan, after hayl al-salah. Now let's say you drop that and say hayl al-salat fi rahal.